or additions? If there are no corrections or additions, I would accept a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
I'll motion.
It's a motion from Casey and a second.
I'll second.
Second from Carol Tracy. Do a roll call on that. All approved, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is conflict of interest disclosure. Does anyone have a conflict of interest on anything for tonight's meeting?
No.
Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda, grant recipient and fiscal agent reports. I'm going to turn this over to Debbie and let her walk us through the reports, please.
Okay, we'll start with the WIOA statement of expenditures. As you can see, we're at 37.6% of the budget, which 4 months worth is basically the equivalent of 33.3%. So we are very close, but what sort of puts us over is the administrative expense that gets billed out up until the 50,000. So it's always heavy up front, and then it will even out as we go along through the year. So any questions on anything, any particular line items for that page? Okay, we'll move on to the statement of expenditures for the Apprenticeship Navigator Grant. Currently, we've spent through October 36.9%. One thing I do want to point out, you might notice the medical benefits, that is really high, and the total fringe is at 59.1%. We have planned in probably February or so, early next year, we're probably going to modify that grant to put more towards fringe benefits. So we'll take it out of one of the other categories that we're not expecting to spend all of it under. So the overall grant amount will not change, but we will help accommodate for the fringe benefits that we just did not budget the full amount that we might need. So any questions on that one?
Is Medicare and some of the other that are 35, is that because of the expenditures, heavy expenditures up front on administrative?
No, there's no administrative for the Apprenticeship Navigator one.
Oh, that's right.
And
Okay.
so that 35%, that pretty well falls right in line with the salary amount. It's just that the medical, whenever we first applied for the grant, we really didn't know what to expect. So fringes, we just have to, after the fact, we'll modify just to have that taken care of. So any other questions on that one? Okay, the next is the accounts payable report. A lot of it is just business as usual. There were a couple incumbent worker training projects that got paid, Effingham Equity and Peerless. As you can see, for the payments to Lakeland College, there were several admin expenses.
Mine's cut off.
And a couple other oddball things that is an annual thing. The Philadelphia insurance, that was our directors and officers insurance that we pay for, and then we bill out portions to the partners. So, and you'll see that on the MOU report here in a few minutes. And then the Workforce 180, that is the podcast renewal. So everything else is pretty well same old, but take a look at that and let me know if there's any questions on it. Okay, not hearing anything for that. The next is the key metrics report. Just a couple things want to point out right now for the obligations for the 22-681023 grant. It's showing not meeting for the dislocated worker. That's just as of the moment. We have plans for that money. We are actually able to transfer up to 100% between adult and dislocated worker. And Seth already has more than enough adult anticipated expenses. So we have plans early next year to modify that grant also to switch it over to adult. And so once that gets done, then that will correct itself.
Just know it's not gonna work for her.
Yeah. A couple other things, the youth in school, the not more than 50% of youth budget for the 21 grant. That one, as we've discussed in the past, that one, we will not hit that 50% mark. We knew that going in just because of the influx of the youth money, that we just decided we were going to spend it on youth, period, and not worry about the 50% requirement. So we know that that is not going to hit that 50%. The 22 grant probably will not either, but we'll just see how that plays out as we get the money spent. So. And then for the minimum for the work experience, we do have plans for the 21 grant that will be above the 20% mark whenever it's all said and done. I forgot to look. I'm thinking we have maybe 30 or so, some thousand left for that grant, and it's all going to get put towards work experience. So once we do that, it will hit the 20%. The 22 grant, that's another story. Once we start applying money towards it, we'll see how it ends up shaking out, but I'm not quite for sure where that's going to end up falling. So, but we do have plans for the 21 grant to actually hit that 20%. Any questions on that one? Okay, the next is the training versus overhead, the next 2 pages. Basically, the first one, that is the one where the state looks at our adult and dislocated worker money to make sure that we are spending at least 50% on training. And right now we're sitting at 74.7%. We are well above the threshold. The second page is just sort of an internal check just to make sure that all of our money is still keeping that right balance, and we're at 67.3%, so very easily above where we need to be. So any questions on that one?
And what's it supposed to be at?
50%. So, yep. The next page is the MOU invoices. Like I said, we paid Philadelphia Insurance for the board, directors, and officers insurance. And we billed out to the other partners their portion, which came out to $1,884.60. That just got billed out in the last week or two, something like that. And we've already actually received from SEFs already, so they're starting to come in already, the reimbursements. So we should anticipate seeing a lot of those over the next probably month or two. I know that Department of Employment Security, theirs is always later in the fiscal year, if not July of the next year, but we know that going into it. So any questions on that one? Okay. The next page is just basically our incumbent worker training projects that we currently have on file. Tony just said this morning that we've got a new one that's been added just since this was sent out, a Lester Buildings, for another $4,510. So I think we're sitting pretty good on that. We definitely have room for more projects as they come along. So, and we do know Charles Industries, they're right now committed is almost 17,000, but we know they will not spend that entire amount. So once that is done, then we'll sort of see where we sit with the remaining funds. So any questions on that one? Okay, then the other couple things I just wanted to point out. We have applied for a new trade grant for $52,535. We actually just got some paperwork back from the state yesterday, and it got signed and sent back in this afternoon. So hopefully we will have that official paperwork done, probably pushing it by the next couple of weeks, but definitely by January. So we have that in the works. And the Lakeland annual audit, it was done. We provided all of our normal annual information. It was approved by the Lakeland board in October, and it's required that we send that off to DCO, and that got sent in like a week or so ago. So they should have everything they need for it. So any questions on anything?
Seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the grant recipient and fiscal agent reports that Debbie provided for us.
Make a motion.
Motion from Kevin, a second. Kim,
Okay,
roll call, please.
Casey,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
It's good to go.
Thank you. Current LWA 23 performance report. Lori, could you provide a report for us?
Sure. Everybody should have a copy of the most recent performance report. Right now, we are showing an overall outcome that we are failing. That's pretty typical this early in the program year. As our case managers are doing follow-up, a lot of that we're failing are on the employment rates for post-quarter 2 and post-quarter 4. And as we do follow-up, those numbers will increase, and we should be meeting those probably towards the latter part, May or June of next year. The youth or the measurable skills gain, same thing. That's when as we have people graduating from the program, moving on, that's when we are able to put in those measurable skill gains, and at the same time, those credential attainments. So those should all go up also. So we're kind of, right where we should be right now. We did negotiate the 15 performance measures the end of September with DCEO, and we did come to an agreement. Those are for program year 22 and 23. So we were pretty happy with, we did negotiate hard on a couple of them. But I think the numbers that we came up, it was fair numbers for us and attainable. So does anybody have any questions on that? Okay.
No questions for Lori? We'll move on to Tony with the program and fiscal monitoring report.
It says no report on, oh, it's just on my thing, I guess. I really don't have a report. Since we met last, I went and visited Effingham Child Development Center. We had several youth work experience participants that were there. Went and talked to them. And usually that conversation is just how things are going, how Seth's doing as far as their case management. And if they have any questions, they're afraid to ask their case manager. That's really all it is make sure everything's going okay. And then we talk to the supervisor also to make sure that the youth participants are doing what they should be doing. And so that's really all having that in that report. It's not really much of a report. It's kind of an ongoing monitoring. After the first of the year, I'll do more monitoring on, we have several OJT contracts. I'll go talk to them as well. So just kind of an ongoing thing, but that's happened since the last time I met. So
Any questions for Tony? Tony, can you give us an update on the service provider contract?
yeah, so our provider contract with CEFS expires June 30 of 2023. There is a clause in their contract says that they will get an extension for 1 year if the board sees fit. So we vote on it now. We want to get it out there now, just in case the board says, no, we don't want to give them that extension. We have to have time to do another RFP before the next fiscal year starts July 1st. So what we're asking as far as what CEFS has done in the past and their performance with us, would we grant them an extension for 1 year to 6/30 of 24? And then we're going to have to RFP out next year anyway. So it's, like I said, the only reason we do that now, just in case the board says, no, we're not, CEFS is awful, we're not going to do it. We have to have time to go out for an RFP. So
So will that be at the board meeting Monday?
It will be. It'll be in Chris's report at the board meeting on Monday.
I guess I'm looking to the committee. Do we want to extend that contract? If we do think that that's the recommendation we want to take to the board, then I'll report that out during our committee report to the board. So I guess I'm looking to the group to, does anyone have any objections or any
I move we
suggestions?
recommend.
Okay.
How's that?
That sounds good.
Sounds great. Yeah.
I don't think we'll take any action at this meeting, but that's what I'll take as a recommendation. for
Right,
that.
well,
Okay.
if we vote to,
Does anyone have any questions or anything? I know we've got Kevin and Lori both here, so if there are any CEFS questions, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask how it's going now that you guys are back.
How,
How it's going now that the one stop is all back up and running.
seems to be doing really well. We have some numbers. We opened up kind of mid-September. One-stop numbers for SEFs, we had 15. This was 19th through the 30th of September. IDS had 33. October, the numbers went up. We had 65. IDES had 85. November, SEFs, we had 54 and IDES had 159. And there's a bigger number for IDES and there's a lot of seasonal layoffs during that time. So that's probably, but there's a lot of foot traffic. It's nice seeing the doors open and folks coming into the center. And I think, you know, the more people find out that we are open, people will be accessing those services. So, you know, we're excited. The doors are back open and, but seems to be going well. No problems, difficulties. So looks good.
Is there any one thing that you see that people are asking for?
I think a lot on the UI side.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you know, even though it's the one stop, that's still the unemployment office.
Yeah.
You know, it's really,
Yeah.
it really is.
It holds that name.
Yeah. But a lot of, I don't know if we've had many just walking out off the street inquiring, you know, about
Mhm.
looking for a job, anything like that. They've always been coming in for something very specific. But I think, you know, with time, we were closed for so long, I think people got used to that. So it's just getting the word out. We are open for business and we are, you know, you can walk in. Now IDS, they're still strictly by appointment only. But for our side, you know, anybody can come in, you know, and ask questions. We'll be happy, you know, doing resumes, things like that. If they're doing job search, we can do that also. So
You get stopped by the security guard before you walk in first.
the security guards are still there. And really, they do a great job. They really do. I mean, even when we were closed, they were very good with the customers coming to the office and they were super with the customers. So, yeah, it's went really well.
How many times can you roll over? Is it just one extension? So is it kind of like an
It's a
every
three- it's a
2-year
three-year
kind of thing that
contract
you have to do an
Yes,
RFP?
it's a 3-year contract. By
3-year.
law, we have to do it at least every 4 years. So we do it every 3 years with that 1-year extension if their performance
I
is good
see.
enough.
Okay,
So
Okay.
regardless of, we're gonna have to do an RFP next year for sure, so. And I appreciate the extension, so I don't have to do it this year.
Does that need to be formally voted on or just?
No,
I think.
We're gonna take it as a recommendation to the board.
Is it on the board agenda or not? If it's not, it's not that big of a deal, because we can approve it in Chris's
committee
report, but-
reports, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know if we put it on the agenda or not. I don't know.
Since there are some new people sitting around, could you talk a little bit about, like you just said, 3 years is what we have in our contract. We have that 4th-year option. We're required to go every 4 years. When would we start the RFP process? If the board approves the 1-year extension, when will we start the RFP process and what does that look like as we move forward?
So the RFP process will start, since the contract's gonna start in July. So the process will start in December. We will send something out as far as, hey, we're looking for bidders to bid on adult dislocated worker and youth services. And it spells out the term of the contract and budget of the contract, I think. And it gives, and then we have a set timeline of, you got a month to respond saying, hey, Cephs wants to bid on this, or Mantricon wants to bid on this, or whatever. And then we got another month, I think, to get their bid in, and we got another month. I think that gets us to about March area to get the bids in, and then the board has a team of 3 or 4 people go through a checklist, go through a grading process, I guess. And then in the March meeting, they recommend to the board who they want to get the contract to. So if we have, in the past, we've only had Cephs as a bidder, so it's been fairly easy. So, but if we have competition, we're gonna have to go to the board and say, hey, we want so-and-so to have the contract. We do that in March, because if it's not Cephs, then we have time to make that transition. So that's what it looks like from December to July anyway. We've done it enough times that it's kind of clockwork. It's a lot of tedious paperwork, but that's how it works anyway.
Service provider contract is an item on the Monday board agenda.
It is.
It's a separate standalone
Okay.
item that requires.
I'm kind of glad we did that then, because I think it says it in the contract that the board has to vote on it.
I
So
think that's why we ended up.
we
doing it
could,
this
yeah.
way.
We
We
could
talked
have,
about this. It's just been a little while.
we talked about it. It was like last week. So much has happened since then. We would have made it work anyway, but
Any questions on the service provider contract? Seeing none, we'll move on to other business. I think Tony had some information on youth committee and some of our discussions we've had at the youth committee. You could share that information, Tony.
I hate that you're back there, Carol. Anyway, so Chris and I and Jamie and Debbie, we've all been talking, and Lori, for the last several years, really, that the youth council in our area has really done a lot of nothing. And so when WIA was enacted back 1998, I think, youth council was required. Every area had to have a youth council. Well, when WIA got authorized, youth council was not required. It was just recommended. So we put it in our bylaws that it was going to be a standing committee. We chose to have the youth council or youth committee. But then, and also again, in our bylaws, it said that every standing committee has to have 50% of their membership as a board member. Well, we were far out of compliance with that clause in our bylaws. So we were gonna just do away with the youth committee and just kind of, we're not gonna do away with it, but get it out of our bylaws so we don't have to worry about compliance issues. So I emailed the state and said, hey, is there any other issue that you can see that if we did this? She says, well, you still have to take care of the youth elements and that you still have to take care of youth. And we're gonna do that. So what we're gonna recommend, and why I'm telling you guys, is because this committee takes care of all policies, all agreements, everything. You guys have to approve it before we take it to the board. So what we are going to suggest, I think, after the youth committee on Monday, they're going to talk about it first to see what they want to do. So either way, we get rid of the youth committee as far as a standing committee of our board, and we still meet. They still report to the board on youth activities, but we're not bound by compliance issues of having a quorum and having a 50% of our board being on the committee. Because right now we don't have enough people on our board that are really youth oriented. We really want guidance counselors. We want YMCA directors or whatever that deal with youth. And we're bound by our bylaws, so we can't do that. So we're either going to take it away or we're going to change the bylaws to say it's allowed in the law, which I don't know which one we're going to do. We're going to talk about it. We're going to change our bylaws either way. It's either going to take it out as a standing committee, or we're going to leave it as a standing committee, but we're going to change the wording in. It says 50% of membership does not have to, that does not count, I guess, for the youth committee. Because, and then it spells it out in the law, and I just copied and pasted from the law, put in our bylaws. So like I said, either way, come March, this committee is going to have to talk about that and kind of approve it, I guess, because it's going to be a bylaws change. We're going to have to take bylaws to the state and have them. Anyway, I just want to kind of let you know that's what we've been talking about. And like I said, Chris has been on the youth committee forever, and it's just it's very disappointed, I think, that it all tended to Title I, give us referrals, Title I, give us referrals. And then when everybody left the room, it just kind of went, and it was just crickets until next quarter. So go in a different direction, we hope, maybe, if we can get other people that have a little youth activities in their daily lives that we could talk about. So anyway, that's the
So who
gist
is on
of the
the committee?
change.
So who is on the committee?
Well, right now, we had 8 people on the committee with Amy Corbin from SAIL, what is the Soil Access for Independent Living. And then Tiffany Mackey, which is on our board. We had Chuck Jones, DRS, he was from Department of Rehab. Kevin, Chris, Casey.
Adam.
Well, that'd be, yeah, okay, that'd be Carolyn Jorgensen, so that's Department of Rehab. So a lot of the people that were on it, there's like 8 people on it. But they weren't really youth oriented. The only people we had that was really youth oriented was like Kevin and Lori. So we were trying to get away from that and get a little more conversation to help the youth of our area, other than just having a committee to say we did. So anyway, when we going forward in March, we're going to have to do something. And I just want to let you guys know that that's coming. Either way, like I said, either way, we're going to have to do something. We'll figure it out at the youth meeting on Monday. But that's where we're going to head with this anyway.
Tony did reach out to the state, and I'm going to read just a little bit from some of the information that Laura Dahm had sent back. Committee members appointed for their experience and expertise may bring their expertise to help the committee address the employment, training, education, human, and supportive services needed of eligible youth, including out-of-school youth. Members may represent agencies such as secondary and post-secondary education, training, health, disability, mental health, housing, public assistance, and justice, or be representatives of economic and community development organizations and employers. The committee may also include parents, participants, and youth. So I think we can expand that committee out to really get a better feel of the youth and what's going on in the community, because we know it's changing. And they talk about mental health in there, and I think that's an area that's probably affecting many of our youth right now. So we want to make the committee more robust and actually going out and doing and finding out what is going on and how do we best serve the youth, so that we can bring that information to Lori and say, hey, here's what we're hearing. Here's what we're hearing from other people dealing with youth in the community. Any questions on the youth committee first, or anything about the youth committee? Any other business anyone would like to bring forward for the Planning and Oversight quarterly meeting? Seeing none, our next meeting will be March 16th of 2023, 4:30 p.m. We will be back to meeting at the CEFS office. So excited to see all of the stuff that they have changed, and the coffee bar and all the great things they've got going on there.
Taking
Coffee bar.
donations.
A coffee bar, I know. I was like, you guys got a coffee bar.
Taking donations.
Yeah.
We didn't have flood insurance,
Well,
so.
whoops.
Ugh, ugh.
Yeah, that's right.
But you guys don't have flood insurance either.
I would, that is not something that
Don't
really.
you have to be in a
Unless you're
certain
a
area?
floodway.
Yeah.
We have flood insurance now.
And you'll have another flood for about 500 years.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
when you've already dropped the flood insurance.
Yeah.
This would be a time for any public comment. Being no public comment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Carol and Casey, all in favor, please respond by aye. Opposed, same sign. It is 5:02. We'll be adjourning for the evening. Thank you, everyone.
Mm.